My name is Julia Whitmore. I was the quiet one in our family, the one who baked the birthday cakes, remembered anniversaries, and never raised my voice. But last Sunday, I pulled up to my parents' mansion in a metallic blue Mustang, stepped into the dining room. "Grandma left everything to me," I said, "because she saw who you all really are." My father's fork hit his plate. My mother's jaw dropped. My brother looked like he might cry. "Where are you watching from?" Drop your city in the comments. I want to know where the real ones live. Because if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you're going to feel this one. I was frosting the chocolate cake like it mattered. Each swirl smooth and precise, even though my hands were shaking. It was my dad's birthday, his 63rd. The house smelled like burnt sugar and vanilla, and somewhere upstairs, my mother was setting the table with the good plates. Zach, my 17-year-old brother, hovered at the edge of the doorway, earbuds in, pretending not to watch me. That's when my phone rang. At first, I didn't recognize the number. It was a landline, a ghost from another century, but something in my chest tightened before I even answered. I wiped my hands on a towel, picked up. "Hello," silence. Then a rasp like wind through dry leaves. "Julia." "Grandma," I whispered. Evelyn Whitmore had the kind of voice you remembered even after long silences. But now it sounded thinner than I'd ever heard it. "Please come," she said. "It's urgent." My stomach turned cold. "What's wrong?" "Just come tonight before it's too late." She hung up. I stood there, holding the phone like it might offer answers if I gripped it tighter. When I turned around, Zach was gone. Smart kid. I walked into the dining room where Mom was lighting candles, white ones in crystal holders. She didn't even look up. "I need to leave tonight," I said quietly. She paused mid-strike of the match. "What?" Grandma called. She said to come now. It sounded bad. Then he appeared, my father, Thomas Whitmore, always the center of every room, even if no one wanted him to be. "What is this nonsense?" he barked. "You're not going anywhere." "I have to, Dad. On my birthday." His face flushed, red creeping up like a warning. "Unbelievable. You always ruin everything." Mom straightened the silverware without meeting my eyes. No one said a word. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said. But Grandma asked. "And let me guess," he sneered, "she wants to tell you some dramatic story before she finally croaks. She hasn't made sense in years." She sounded clear. I met his eyes. "Scared," he laughed, bitter. "She's been scared since Nixon. You know how many times she's pulled this deathbed confession routine. Let her call an ambulance if she's dying. We're having roast beef and cake." That's when the door creaked open. Zach stepped in, quiet but deliberate. "Let her go," he said. Dad turned. "What did you just say?" Zach didn't flinch. "She should go if Grandma asked. It's her choice." Silence cracked through the room like thunder. I grabbed my coat off the hook and slipped my boots on fast. No one moved. No one helped. Mom just adjusted a napkin. As I reached the door, I turned back. Some things matter more than cake. And I left. I drove north through the dark, the roads getting narrower, the trees taller. Every mile between us and that house felt like shedding a layer I didn't need anymore. I didn't cry, not once. But I felt something splintering inside me, something that had been holding me upright for too long. Evelyn Whitmore had raised my father. She had survived wars, widow's grief, and a son who resented her. But to me, she'd always been the woman who made blackberry jam in July and pressed flower bookmarks into every novel she gave me. She was sharp, even when her hands shook. She never missed my birthday, not once. If she was calling me now, only me, it wasn't for nothing. By the time I reached her place, a pale Victorian wrapped in pine and fog, I could barely feel my fingers. But I didn't care. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the next few days would change everything. That I was walking into more than an old house with dusty curtains. I was walking into a secret. One that would make my family show their teeth. The next morning came slow and gray. I woke to the scent of steeped chamomile and something earthy, maybe thyme. I was in the guest bedroom, still wrapped in the thick quilt my grandmother had stitched herself, the one with uneven stars in every shade of blue. Downstairs, the house murmured with its usual sounds. The tick of the grandfather clock, the faint creak of pine floorboards expanding in the warmth. But something was different. Something final. When I made it to the kitchen, Evelyn was already there. She was seated at the old round table by the window, hands wrapped around a mug that dwarfed her thin fingers. Her hair was pulled back in a soft bun, and the light made the lines in her face look like a topographical map, deep, deliberate, and earned. "You came," she said softly, her eyes never leaving mine. "I said I would," she nodded. Your father always thought loyalty meant obedience. You understand the difference. She gestured for me to sit. I took the chair across from her. What's going on? Asked. You sounded afraid. Evelyn exhaled slowly like she was trying to empty out something that had been trapped for years. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. The paper was heavy and yellowing. She placed it gently on the table between us. This, she said, is my will. I blinked. Wait, what? I updated it last spring, she continued. After I watched what your parents did when I got pneumonia, you remember that week? I did. They never visited. Said the hospital air made them anxious. I saw enough to know, she said. They've already divided my life into pieces they think they deserve, but they never saw me, not really. She pushed the envelope toward me. It's all yours, Julia, the house, the stocks, the accounts, everything, $4.3 million worth if my lawyer did the math right. My stomach flipped. Grandma, don't argue, you earned it. I didn't do anything for that. She smiled then. You listened, you showed up. You didn't treat me like a relic. That's more than I can say for the rest. I sat there, stunned, staring at the envelope like it might combust in my hands. Don't tell them yet, she said, voice low. Let them keep showing you who they are. That sent a chill up my spine. Why me? I whispered. Because you've lived without expectation. You've been overlooked, underestimated, just like I was. But you're the one who'll know what to do with power because you never expected to have any. There was a knock at the front door, firm and impatient. That's him, she said. The lawyer, go let him in. His name was Matthew Corwin. Polished shoes, gray tie, silver watch that ticked like it could judge your soul. He greeted Evelyn with warmth, but the moment he saw me, he switched to business mode. Miss Whitmore, he said, shaking my hand. Your grandmother has asked me to explain the terms of her estate. He sat beside her, opened his briefcase, and handed me a formal letter stamped and signed. In the event of her passing, he said, you are the sole beneficiary of the Whitmore estate, including this property, 3 investment accounts, 1 Roth IRA, and a portfolio of dividend stocks. He paused. She's also included a clause preventing any challenge to the will. It's watertight. I looked at Evelyn. She was sipping her tea like she'd just won a quiet war. They'll come for it, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They'll come for you first, she corrected. That's how you'll know what they really are. Matthew packed up his case and stood. It's all filed and legal. When the time comes, I'll handle everything. When the door closed behind him, I finally spoke again. I don't know how to thank you. You don't, Evelyn said. You just stay silent, watch, let them hang themselves with their own greed. I sat back numb. Promise me one thing, she added. When it's time, don't protect them, not even Zach. He has to show you who he is. No exceptions. I nodded. I promise. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. They always think the quiet ones won't fight, she said, but we're the ones who strike when it counts. Later that night, after Evelyn had gone to bed, I sat in the parlor surrounded by books that smelled like dust and ink and memory. The storm outside tapped against the windows like a warning. I clutched the letter in my hand and read it again. 4 million, all mine. But all I could think about was my father's face when he found out. And what he'd say when he realized. The daughter who left on his birthday would be the one to end his illusion of control. Rain fell in sheets the morning we buried Evelyn. It came down like it was trying to wash away the truth about the woman in the casket, the lies whispered behind her back, and the secrets that now sat heavy in my chest like an anchor. The chapel was dim, wood-paneled and old, with candlelight flickering across stained glass. Evelyn had wanted something simple, intimate. But the Whitmores didn't know how to do subtle, especially when there was a chance to perform grief in expensive coats. I stood alone in the front row, clutching the black umbrella she'd once said made her feel like an elegant widow in an old mystery novel. It was the only thing I took from her closet that morning. I wore no makeup, no jewelry. I didn't need it, because I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to see them. They arrived 20 minutes late. My mother was draped in a beige trench with gold hardware, far too glamorous for the occasion. My father wore a navy overcoat and an expression like someone forced to attend a dentist appointment, not his own mother's funeral. And Zach, he trailed behind them like a shadow, hands in his pockets, collar soaked. They didn't look at me when they walked in. Didn't nod. Didn't even blink. I watched them take seats in the second row, as far away as decency allowed. Like I was the embarrassment, not the woman who had stood by Evelyn's hospital bed while they were too busy redecorating their sunroom. The pastor spoke in soft platitudes. Kind, generic things about Evelyn's spirit, her faith, her gardening, but the people in the room knew better. She hadn't been some sweet old lady baking pies for the church. Evelyn had been sharp, private, intimidating even, and I loved her for it. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to speak, no one stood. Not my parents, not Zach, so I rose. I walked to the front slowly, each step echoing. My hands were steady, my voice wasn't. Most people didn't understand my grandmother, I began, but maybe that's because they didn't try. There was a long silence. She taught me that silence is power, that listening is a kind of strength, and that sometimes the people who love you the most don't shout it from rooftops, they just show up, every time. I paused, letting the words settle like ash. She wasn't flashy, but she paid attention. She noticed what you didn't say, and she remembered what you tried to forget. My eyes drifted briefly to my mother. Her jaw was tight. My father looked at his watch. Zach, though, he looked down. She told me once that people show you who they really are when they think there's nothing left to gain. I guess we'll find out who those people are now. I walked back to my seat, my heels clicking like punctuation. After the service, I stood outside in the drizzle while everyone else crowded beneath the awning. No one came to offer condolences. No one hugged me, but I didn't need that kind of warmth anymore. "You must be Julia." The voice came from my left. A woman in a dark green coat, somewhere in her 60s, stood just beyond the umbrella's reach. Her hair was salt and pepper, tied back, and she held a folder under one arm. "I was Evelyn's attorney before Matthew," she said. "She asked me to come today quietly. She suspected your family would make a show of absence or a show of something else." I tilted my head. "What something else?" "She thought they might try to speak ill of her once she was gone." The woman gave a small, rueful smile. "Funny thing, preparing for your own funeral. She prepared for everything." The woman handed me the folder. "She left this for you, said you'd know when to use it." I took it, surprised by the weight. Inside were copies of old letters. Property deeds. Notes scribbled in Evelyn's handwriting. An annotated list of stocks, many of which I recognized from the will. But there was one page clipped on top in bold cursive. "Let them talk, they always do." Back at the reception, held at a nearby hall that smelled faintly of meatballs and lemon polish, I watched from a distance as my parents mingled like socialites at a charity gala. "Poor Evelyn," my mother said to an older cousin. "She really let herself go in the end. Cats and clutter, it was honestly sad." My father chimed in, "No savings, nothing left behind but dust and sentimental nonsense." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "She left more than that," I said quietly. They both turned. My mother's lips pursed. My father raised an eyebrow. "Oh, did she leave you her soup recipes?" He smirked. "She deserved your respect," I said, "even now." My mother rolled her eyes, wine glass in hand. "Evelyn always played favorites. Just like you're doing now." There it was, not grief, not shame, resentment. I looked at Zach. He was standing near the dessert table, biting the inside of his cheek. Watching, I said nothing else. Because silence, Evelyn had taught me, was the beginning of truth, and I'd just heard enough of theirs. The morning after the funeral, I stood in my childhood kitchen, staring at the cracked tile floor like it might offer advice. I'd driven down from Evelyn's that morning, back to the Whitmore house, though I tried not to call it that in my mind anymore. It didn't feel like mine. Not even in memory. The walls were the same pale eggshell, the counters still cluttered with unopened mail, and the air still smelled like coffee left too long on the burner. But something about it felt hollow. I'd told myself I was just visiting, that I needed to see Zach. But really, I was setting the stage, because Evelyn had been right. They needed to show me who they were. And today I was going to ask for something they'd never let me forget I needed: help. The plan was simple. Ask for rent money, nothing outrageous. Just $1,500, something entirely reasonable given the family's means. I'd claim I'd fallen behind. Lay it out plainly. Let them decide what kind of people they wanted to be. Because Evelyn had warned me, they'll show you their true faces. And I was ready to see every one of them. I waited until just after lunch. Dad was still in his reading chair, the one he pretended to fall asleep in during family dinners he didn't want to attend. Mom was in the kitchen, humming along to some old jazz tune, slicing lemons for tea she'd never drink. The perfect moment. I walked in with my hands in my pockets, trying to look smaller than usual. "Dad," I said gently. He glanced up from the paper. "What?" "I need a favor." He folded the paper slowly, suspicious already. "I'm a little short on rent this month." My voice stayed steady. I was wondering if you could help, just $1,500. He stared at me, then the laugh came. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel in pitch, but it cut sharper than if he'd screamed. You, he said. Asking us for money, Mom turned, wiping her hands on a towel, eyebrows raised. I thought you were so independent now, Julia. Moved out, ran off to Evelyn's. We assumed you had things handled. I've had a few unexpected bills, I lied. It's just a rough patch. Dad leaned back in his chair, smug. So run back to that old house. Sell a lamp, open an Etsy store. You're an artist, aren't you? That's what you told Evelyn, or was it a what did you call it, creative sabbatical? Mom snorted into her tea. I'm asking for help, I said quietly, not a lecture. Oh, we're helping, he replied. We're helping you understand the real world. Rent, bills, responsibility. You can't just beg when life gets tough. I'm not begging, I said. I thought maybe as family, Dad stood, brushing imaginary lint off his slacks. Family's not a savings account, Julia. Maybe you should have stayed with Evelyn, Mom added coolly. She seemed to think you walked on water. I felt the flush creep up my neck. And I knew this was exactly the moment Evelyn had prepared me for. Zach had entered the room quietly, standing in the archway. His eyes flicked from me to Dad, then back. He didn't say a word. I turned to leave. No shouting. No grand exit, just a whisper on my way out. Thanks for confirming everything. I sat in my car afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, breath fogging the window. They could have helped, easily, without stress, without even checking a balance, but they didn't even think about it. They laughed. Because to them, needing help meant weakness. And in this house, weakness was a punchline. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through old voicemails Evelyn had left over the years. There was one from last winter that I played twice. You'll never know who people really are until you need them more than they need you. I thought I had learned that lesson, but some truths demand to be relearned. The next morning, I called my cousins. Melanie and Josh were the golden grandchildren, not because they were kind or generous, but because they were loud, flashy, always knew how to dazzle at Thanksgiving. When Melanie got her real estate license, Grandma had sent her a check for confidence. When Josh opened a crypto consultancy that folded in 8 months, no one mentioned it again. They lived in a bright glass house with an in-ground pool and matching labradoodles. Hey Jules, Melanie said over speakerphone. Sorry again about your grandma, so what's up? I gave them the same story. Behind on rent. Short $1,500, just needed a little help. Oh, Josh said. Well, we can help technically, Melanie cut in. Yeah, but it would have to be like a loan, nothing personal, just smart money stuff, you know. Sure, I said, I understand. We'd need something as collateral, Josh added, just in case. Of course. Melanie's voice brightened. See, this is why I told Mom you were the normal one, Josh laughed. What do you have that's worth about $1,500? I smiled. My silence made them nervous. I could feel it. I'll send you a list, I said. Thanks so much. After we hung up, I sat back in the creaky armchair in Evelyn's old parlor. The sun caught the dust just right, casting it like glitter in the air. It was working, every step, every ask, every mask slipping. They were showing me exactly who they were, and I hadn't said a word about the inheritance. Yet, back at my apartment, I sat on the floor, knees drawn up, surrounded by unopened bills and silent walls. The heater clicked faintly in the corner, fighting a battle it was clearly losing. Evelyn's folder rested on the coffee table, still unopened since the funeral. I hadn't touched a penny. Not yet. I kept thinking of the look on my father's face when I asked for help, how fast concern turned to mockery, how my cousins wrapped cruelty in politeness. Every offer I'd received came with strings, knots, and poison. And yet, Zach hadn't said anything. He hadn't helped, but he hadn't laughed either. That counted for something, or at least I wanted it to. My phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen flash across my screen in months, not since the holidays when I baked him a batch of molasses cookies and he forgot to thank me. Zach, I hesitated before picking up. Hey, his voice was cautious, softer than usual. Can we meet? My heart fluttered with a mixture of hope and dread. Is everything okay? I need to tell you something, he said. Can we meet somewhere, not the house? I swallowed. Sure. Where? He paused. That little park by the lake, you know the one. Of course I did. We used to feed ducks there when we were kids. Evelyn used to take us after church, always packing apple slices and juice boxes. See you in 20, I said. The lake was quiet, coated in that soft, eerie fog that swirls like something between dream and secret. I parked near the bench by the water's edge and waited, arms crossed tight against the wind. Zach arrived a few minutes later. No earbuds, no coat. Just a sweatshirt and something small in his hand. He sat beside me without a word. For a while we didn't speak. The water lapped at the rocks. The silence between us was loud. Finally he turned to me. I heard what they said after the funeral. I didn't agree with it. That wasn't what I expected. You didn't say anything, I replied. I wanted to, he sighed. I never know which side I'm supposed to be on. I looked at him. Really looked. He still had that teenage awkwardness in his frame, half boy, half man, but his eyes looked older now. Like Evelyn's. He handed me the small object in his hand, a white envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside, a wad of 20s and 5s, maybe a few hundreds, all worn, all folded carefully. I blinked. What is this? $1,500, he said. I looked up at him sharply. I've been saving since freshman year, he added, shrugging like it was no big deal. Lunch money. Birthday money. I wasn't really sure what I was saving for, but I think this is it. Zach, my voice cracked. I heard what Dad said, and Mom, and Melanie and Josh, I heard it all. I gripped the envelope tighter. Why are you giving me this? He met my eyes, no longer blinking. Because you're the only one who's ever looked out for me. I couldn't hold it back anymore. The tears came fast and full, no drama, just pressure relief. I can't take this, I whispered. It's everything you've saved. I want you to have it. He said it like it was a decision, not a gift. I reached over and hugged him, and for the first time in years, he didn't squirm or pull away. He just held on. No one else has given me anything without a price, I said against his shoulder. Not one person. He pulled back. You don't owe me anything, Jules, you never did. And there it was, the only true moment of love I'd felt in weeks. No strings, no collateral. Just a quiet act of loyalty. Later, as we walked back to our cars, Zach turned to me one last time. They're going to come after you eventually, I can feel it. I nodded. Let them, he paused. What are you going to do? I smiled. Show them who Evelyn really chose. The next morning I woke before dawn. The envelope Zach had given me sat on the nightstand, untouched since the park. I reached for it slowly, like it might vanish if I moved too fast. That envelope held more than money. Held the only proof that someone in my family still remembered how to love without strings. I didn't sleep much after that. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and a mug of stale coffee, going over the numbers. My inheritance was untouched, tucked neatly into accounts I had access to but hadn't touched. I wanted every choice to be deliberate, no impulse, no revenge spending. Evelyn didn't raise me for spectacle, she raised me for strategy. But this wasn't a spectacle. It was a gesture. It was time to turn his kindness into something loud. By 9:30 a.m., I walked through the glass doors of a luxury car dealership just off the main highway, my boots leaving a trail of melted snow behind me. The place gleamed with polished steel and quiet, expensive music. Salespeople circled like polite sharks. Can I help you? A man asked, clearly sizing me up. Maybe, I said, pulling my gloves off. I'm looking for a Mustang, blue, metallic if you've got it. He blinked. We might have a 2021 in that shade. No, I cut in gently. New, and I'll be paying in full. His posture changed instantly. Right this way. We walked across the showroom floor to a beauty parked right under the skylight, sleek, confident, it shimmered like a secret under glass. That's the one. Would you like to test drive it? He asked. I shook my head. No need, it's not for me. He tilted his head. You're buying a new Mustang for someone else. Yep. Someone lucky, he said with a smile. I pulled out my checkbook. You have no idea. As we signed the paperwork, the salesman tried to make small talk. Big gift, he said. Graduation? Nope. Anniversary? I smiled. Let's call it recognition. He laughed, but I didn't explain, because what could I say? My 17-year-old brother gave me the money no one else in my family would. Not as leverage, not as a guilt trip, he just gave. Because for all the noise in our family, he was the only one who saw me drowning and didn't ask if I had a life jacket before throwing a rope. He deserved more than thanks. He deserved to feel seen. After the final signature, the salesman walked me outside where the Mustang now waited in the winter sun. The engine purred, a low growl of promise. I leaned against the door, slipping on my sunglasses. You don't see many women buying muscle cars, he said. This isn't a muscle car, I replied. It's a message. He raised an eyebrow. I slid into the driver's seat just to feel the wheel in my hands, then I handed him the check. Wrap it up, I said. I'll pick it up Sunday morning. Big plans? He asked, still half joking. I looked him square in the eye. I'm bringing it to dinner. Back at Evelyn's house, I stood in her study for a long time, fingers running along the spines of old books and photo frames. There was one of Zach, maybe age 6, sitting on Evelyn's lap, both of them laughing at something just off camera. I set it beside the envelope he'd given me. Then I opened my notebook and started writing the speech I'd give at dinner. Not a script, just a shape, a feeling. I didn't need to memorize it, I'd lived every word of it. The pain, the silence, the truth they refused to see. But now, they'd see it parked in the driveway before I even opened my mouth. And Zach. He'd sit behind the wheel of that Mustang like he'd always belonged there. Sunday was coming, and I was almost ready. Sunday came with a sharp wind and a sky the color of bruised steel. I woke early, dressed in all black, long coat, high boots, hair pulled back tight. Not for drama, for armor. Because tonight I was walking into the lion's den. And I was bringing fire. I pulled up to the dealership just after 10. The metallic blue Mustang sat gleaming in the lot, waxed and ready, the keys in a slim black envelope with my name on it. As the salesman handed them to me, he asked, "You sure you don't want to drive it home yourself?" I smiled faintly. "Oh, I will, but not all the way." By late afternoon, I was parked 2 blocks from my parents' house, the Mustang humming behind me as I waited for the signal. Zach. He'd texted me earlier, "Dinner's at 6, they think you're not coming." Perfect. At 5:55 p.m., I slid the Mustang into gear and turned onto the long stone driveway of the Whitmore estate. The house was already lit, warm and golden behind expensive windows, the kind of house that looked perfect from the outside but was all rot underneath. I parked with precision right in front of the house. Not off to the side, not tucked away, right where they'd all see it. Then I stepped out. My heels clicked softly on the cobblestone. The cold didn't touch me. I could already imagine them in the dining room. Roast chicken, linen napkins, polished wine glasses. Same performance, different week. And in a few seconds, all of it was about to come crashing down. I rang the doorbell. Zach opened it, and the look on his face when he saw what I was standing in front of, worth everything. "You didn't," he whispered, eyes wide. "I did." I held out the keys. "For you." He blinked, frozen. "Are you serious?" "You gave me more than anyone else in this family ever has," I said. "You showed me loyalty, no price tag, no strings, just heart." Behind us, a voice called out. "Is someone at the door?" My mother. I gave Zach a look. "Ready?" He pocketed the keys. We walked in together. They were already seated when we entered the dining room. Roast chicken carved, mashed potatoes in crystal bowls, candles lit. A perfect illusion. Until we broke it. "Oh, look who decided to show up," my father said, half laughing. "Changed your mind about playing martyr." My mother gave a tight smile. "There's an extra chair if you really want to stay." "I'm not here for dinner," I said calmly. "Oh, then what are you here for?" she asked, already irritated. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the second set of Mustang keys, tossed them across the table. They landed with a clink in front of Zach's plate. Everyone froze. My father looked between the keys and me. "What the hell is this?" "It's a car," I said. Zach looked like he wanted to disappear. My mother's voice rose an octave. "You bought Zach a Mustang?" "Yes." "Are you out of your mind?" I smiled. "Probably, but at least I'm out of your reach." My father stood, red creeping up his neck. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "Grandma left it to me." The room collapsed into silence. "I'm sorry, what?" my mother whispered. "She left me everything," I said. "The house, the accounts, the stocks. $4.3 million worth of everything, because she saw exactly what you all are." My father laughed, a bitter, choking sound. "No, she wouldn't do that." "She did. She didn't have the mental capacity. She was of sound mind, the will is airtight, her lawyer already filed everything, you'll be getting copies this week." "You tricked her," my mother snapped. "Manipulated her." "I didn't have to," I replied. "She saw it all. She told me to say nothing and wait. Let them show you their true faces," she said. And oh, how they had. Melanie's fake loan, Josh's interest demands, Clarice's market-rate hospitality, my father's laughter, my mother's disdain. "You can't do this," my father growled. "We're family." "Exactly," I said, "which makes this the final favor I'll ever do for you." I turned to Zach. "You gave me kindness when no one else did. You reminded me who I was." He looked like he might cry. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You earned that car. Not with money, with decency." Then I turned back to the rest. "And you?" I let the silence stretch. You can ask Clarice for a market rate loan. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to charge you 22% interest. My mother's hand trembled. My father muttered something under his breath I didn't care to hear, but none of it mattered because the truth was out. And this time I got the last word. The next morning I woke up to chaos. Missed calls, voicemails, texts. A flurry of digital outrage pulsing through my phone like a second heartbeat, all from my family. Apparently, Sunday dinner hadn't sat well. My father had called 7 times. The last message was barely controlled fury. You think this is over, we'll see what the lawyer says, Julia. You're not walking away with everything. You manipulated an old woman in decline, this will never hold up. My mother had taken a different approach. Sweetheart, I know you're overwhelmed. Let's just talk. Privately. Don't let money come between family. We're all still grieving Evelyn, grieving. They hadn't shed a single tear at the funeral, then came the group messages. From Melanie, honestly, this feels shady. Grandma always said family shares everything. You can't seriously believe she meant to cut us out. From Clarice, I'm consulting an attorney. If Evelyn wasn't mentally sound, this entire thing is void. You might want to reconsider the stunt you pulled. Stunt. That's what they thought it was. A performance. They still didn't realize the show was over and the spotlight had shifted. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I called Matthew Corwin, Evelyn's lawyer. He answered on the first ring. Good morning, Miss Whitmore, he said, with the practiced calm of someone who's dealt with far worse than my family. I think the wolves are circling, I replied, sinking into Evelyn's old armchair. I expected as much, he said. I've already received a cease and desist draft from a boutique firm your Aunt Clarice retained. Poorly written, filled with emotional appeals and zero legal standing. She's threatening to contest the will. They all are, can they? Unlikely, he said. Your grandmother was of sound mind. We have her psychological evaluations on file, notarized. We even recorded the will reading and her final directive. Every I dotted, every T crossed. She was clear, deliberate, and frankly a little smug about it. I smiled despite myself. She wanted them to try, didn't she? She dared them to, he said. By noon, the Whitmore group chat, once a bland thread of family birthdays and casserole photos, had morphed into a legal battlefield. Uncle Darren chimed in. My kids spent summers with Evelyn too. This isn't fair, Julia, it should have been divided. Aunt Lisa, no one is saying you don't deserve something, but everything, that's just cruel. Funny how no one cared what Evelyn wanted. Only what they expected. That afternoon, I received an email with the subject line. Notice of intent to contest attached was a formal notice from a legal firm representing multiple members of my family. The language was stiff, accusatory, and drenched in entitlement. They were questioning Evelyn's mental capacity, the validity of the updated will, and my influence as a dependent granddaughter with unmonitored access to the decedent in her final months. Dependent? I laughed out loud. Evelyn hadn't depended on anyone but her own grit until the day she died. She'd told me more than once that she'd rather die with her boots on than let someone tuck her into a quiet death. She'd also told me this might happen. And she'd left something for it. I pulled the untouched folder from the drawer of her desk, the one the former attorney had handed me at the funeral. I'd skimmed it once. Now, I opened it fully. Inside were copies of old letters, handwritten notes, timestamps, medical records, and at the very top, a typed memo titled, If They Come for Her. Evelyn had listed in bullet points every potential challenge and how she'd prepared for it. She named each family member and the excuse she predicted they'd use. Clarice, claims of diminished capacity. Melanie, we were always close story. Thomas, dad, she didn't mean everything. Each one marked, anticipated, handled, ignore. Attached to the back of the folder was a USB drive labeled, For Julia Only Final Statement. I plugged it into my laptop with trembling hands. The video began with Evelyn sitting in the same armchair I now occupied. Hi, sweetheart, she said, looking straight into the camera. If you're watching this, it means they're doing exactly what we knew they would. So let me say this clearly for the record, she leaned in. I knew what I was doing. I knew exactly who deserved what. And if they want to drag my name through the dirt to claw back what I've already buried, let them try. But don't you dare let them scare you. Her voice softened. You're not stealing anything, you're receiving what was freely given, and if they can't handle that truth, then maybe they never really loved me, or you. The video cut out. I sat in silence for a long time, then I forwarded the clip to Matthew. Send this to their lawyers, I wrote, and add the medical documentation. He replied within the hour, already done, expect them to fold. That night I received one final voicemail, my father. His voice was flat, controlled. Julia, we're reevaluating the situation. Maybe we overreacted. Why don't we meet and discuss how to move forward as a family? You don't have to isolate yourself over this. I deleted it because the storm had passed, and all it left behind was silence. A silence I finally owned. The week after the legal threats fizzled, everything went eerily quiet. No more cease and desists. No more demands, no more rage, instead sweetness. The kind that leaves a strange taste in your mouth. It started with a text from my mother. Thinking of you, sweetheart, want to come by for lunch? I made your favorite rosemary focaccia. Then a voicemail from Aunt Clarice. No hard feelings, Julia. These things get messy. Let's clear the air. I'll treat you to a lavender latte, my treat this time. And finally, the most shocking of all, an invite from Dad. Sunday dinner again, just family, no drama, we'll even let you pick the wine. Let me pick the wine, I laughed so hard I startled myself. The wolves were changing their tone, because nothing says we surrender like a bread basket and forced smiles. I didn't respond for 3 days. I needed time to decide what kind of game I was playing now. Was this still war, or had I already won? Then came the bouquet. Dozen pink roses delivered to Evelyn's house. No card, just an envelope that read, "Let's start over." I didn't even open it. Instead, I called Zach. He answered on the first ring. They're being nice to me, Julia, like offering to drive me to school, complimenting my outfits, kind of nice. They're circling, I said, testing the fence. He was quiet for a moment. Are you going to let them back in? I don't know yet. They don't deserve it. No, I said softly, but they need it. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? My entire life I'd been the one in the corner, the afterthought, the one they assumed would always be there, helpful, quiet, unthreatening. But now I had something they wanted. Something they couldn't control, couldn't twist, couldn't steal. Power. And I had to decide what to do with it. The next day, I showed up to my parents' house unannounced. The look on my mother's face when she opened the door. Like a hostess caught off guard before a dinner party she never expected you to attend. Julia, she beamed, too wide. You got my text. I did. Come in, I just pulled a lemon tart from the oven. We sat in the sunroom, same floral pillows, same porcelain teacups, but everything felt off. Like someone had Febrezed over mildew and called it clean. She poured tea and talked about meaningless things, her garden club, Zach's grades, a new brand of non-toxic dish soap she discovered. I nodded, smiling politely, watching her dance around the real reason I was there. And finally she got to it. I just think now that the dust has settled, she said sweetly, we could revisit the wool together, as a family, maybe discuss how to honor Evelyn in a way that includes everyone. There it was, wrapped in sugar, laced with poison. Honor her, I said calmly. You mean redistribute what she left me, she blinked. Well, it just feels more fair. I leaned forward. She didn't believe in fair, I said. She believed in earned. Then I stood. And with the softest smile I could muster, I added, if you're ever in real need, Mom, Clarice offers rooms at market rate. Then I left, because I didn't owe them anger anymore, just silence and the memory of who they used to be when they thought I was powerless. The last of autumn slipped into winter quietly that year. Evelyn's house was finally starting to feel like mine. The curtains were open more. The fireplace didn't feel haunted. I stopped tiptoeing around her favorite chair like she might suddenly walk in from the garden and ask me what I was doing in her house. But there were still days when I reached for my phone, wanting to call her. Not for advice. Just to say, I did it, I listened, I waited, you were right. Zach visited every weekend. He brought his laundry, his crooked smile, and a sense of normalcy I hadn't realized I needed. His Mustang sat in the driveway like a silent monument to everything that had shifted. We didn't talk about the rest of the family much anymore. They'd mostly gone quiet. Clarice stopped sending legal letters. My father stopped pretending he wanted to negotiate. Even my mother had retreated back into clipped texts and polite avoidance. They'd realized the door wasn't just closed, it was locked. And I wasn't standing on the other side hoping they'd knock again. I was gone. Really gone. One evening, I picked up Zach from school and told him to pack a bag. Where are we going? He asked, shoving clothes into a backpack. Somewhere without cell towers and entitlement. He grinned. So, not the family cabin? Definitely not. We drove through the night, windows down just enough to let the cold air bite our cheeks and keep us awake. We stopped only once for gas station hot cocoa and a bag of gummy bears. By dawn, we were in the Carolinas, cruising along a coastal road that shimmered with early light. We found a small inn by the beach, nothing fancy, just wooden floors and the faint scent of salt air. We dropped our bags, grabbed smoothies, and walked straight to the water. Zach laid his towel in the sand and flopped down dramatically. "This beats every family vacation we ever took," I laughed, sitting beside him. "It beats most families, period." The beach was almost empty, just a few couples walking in silence and a flock of gulls shrieking overhead. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe without bracing for impact. We sat there for hours, talking, not talking. At one point he turned to me and said, "Do you think she'd be proud of you?" I looked out at the horizon, the line where the sky kissed the sea. "I think she already was," I said. "Before I did any of this." Zach nodded, quiet. Then he pulled out 2 plastic smoothie cups from the bag and handed me one. He raised his like a toast. "To Evelyn," I clinked mine against his. "To truth, to loyalty, to not needing blood to define family." We drank, grinning, and just like that, something inside me loosened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but peace. It was Zach who asked the question I hadn't let myself consider, not out loud anyway. We were back from the beach, sprawled on Evelyn's old couch with a pizza box between us and a movie we weren't really watching. He glanced at me between bites and said, "Are you ever going to talk to them again?" I didn't answer right away, because I had, in my head, 100 versions of it, some sharp, some cold. One where I slammed the door again just to hear the satisfying click. But the real answer, "I don't know," I said finally. "Not like before." He nodded like he understood, but I saw the flicker of sadness. Not for me, for himself. He was still their son, their nephew, their blood. That was the difference between us. I owed them nothing now, but he still had to live with the fallout of what they'd become. So I made a decision, not for them, for him. The following week I called Matthew, Evelyn's lawyer, and asked him to prepare a letter, simple, professional, airtight. I wanted it delivered to my parents, Aunt Clarice, Melanie, and Josh. Every one of them. Not as a warning, as closure. 2 days later I sat in his office reading it over one last time. It wasn't angry, it wasn't even emotional, it was a declaration. As the sole beneficiary of Evelyn Whitmore's estate, I am choosing to maintain full control of her assets as specified in her will. I do not intend to divide, reallocate, or revisit this decision in any form. All legal matters are considered resolved. All ties, accordingly, are closed. Matthew looked at me over the edge of his glasses. "Sure you're ready to send it?" I nodded. "I'm not doing this for revenge," I said. "I'm doing it for my own peace. And maybe for Zach's." A week passed, then 2, no reply, no calls, just silence. But not the same silence as before, the one packed with resentment and rage. This one felt defeated. They knew it was over, not just the money, the game. And with that, something strange happened. I started to feel free. I spent more time at Evelyn's desk, opening drawers I'd never touched, flipping through old letters, photos, receipts. She'd saved everything, cards from me when I was a kid, even my crayon drawings folded like treasure maps. Tucked in the back of her bottom drawer, I found something I hadn't seen before, a small, sealed envelope with my name on it, just my name. I opened it carefully, hands trembling. Inside was a single page, written in her familiar slanted handwriting. "Julia, if they ever make you question why I chose you, remember this. You never needed an audience to do the right thing. You never asked what was in it for you. You just loved me, that's all I ever wanted." I read it 3 times, then I cried, not out of sadness but relief, because I didn't need their approval, I never did. Evelyn had already answered the only question that mattered. One afternoon I found myself driving past my parents' house. Not on purpose. Not entirely. I slowed just enough to see the front porch. Same hydrangeas, same spotless windows, same cold perfection. For a second I thought about pulling in, knocking, saying something, but instead I kept driving, because I'd already said everything I needed to, with silence, with strength, with that blue Mustang parked in my driveway like a flag they'd never get to claim. That night I told Zach, "I don't hate them, I just finally see them." He nodded. "That's enough, isn't it?" "Yes," I said, "it is." And it was. Months passed. The cold melted into spring and Evelyn's garden, untouched for so long, started to bloom again. I didn't plant anything. I just cleared the weeds and let what was already there rise up, wild and real, kind of like me. Zach came by every Friday after school, Sometimes we cooked. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. The Mustang still sat out front, a little dusty from all the pollen but just as defiant as ever. I caught him polishing it one afternoon, grinning like a kid who still couldn't believe it was his. That car wasn't just a gift. It was a declaration that someone saw him, believed in him, that kindness still mattered. One evening we sat on the porch steps watching the sky fade into soft pinks and blues. He nudged me with his shoulder. "You ever regret any of it?" I didn't even need to think. "No," I said. "Not a single thing," he smiled. "Me neither." I looked at him, taller now. Wiser, still quiet but stronger in his silence. "You know," I said, "this right here, this is the real inheritance." He raised an eyebrow. "A porch and bad takeout," I laughed. "No, this peace, truth, knowing where we stand." He nodded, thoughtful. "Feels like we won." "We did," I whispered. "Not with lawsuits or money, with clarity." I never went back to who I was before because she was always waiting for permission, for approval, for crumbs of affection from people who only knew how to take. Now I live in a house filled with books, light, and memory. I sleep without flinching. I speak without shrinking. And every time someone tells me family is everything, I just smile, because I know better. Loyalty is everything. Thank you for staying through every part of this story. If it resonated with you, even a little, leave a comment and tell me, what did you walk away from and what did you find on the other side? Let's talk. Let's heal. Let's tell the truth.